So tell me where you normally start on a project, how you start. Like, do you come up with the idea first? Do you find the objects first?
I bought this pig like 2 years ago. And I thought he was a beautiful pig because he had an interesting face. And a lot of times that's what I'm looking for when I'm going out for ceramic objects, is an interesting face. So I was thinking about adding on an appendage at the top here, and we'll see how that looks and how it's reading, and then I may add something down here. A lot of them have like these really interesting faces, and I want them to be able to maintain this degree of their own happiness despite what might be like a horrible issue. So then I was just thinking, I was intending on maybe putting a secondary limb down here, but I may end up moving it up higher. On the idea that he might be able to turn over on his back and run away on 2 extra legs. I don't know. This is kind of just my thinking when I'm doing these things. It's like, how would this work in real life? And I noticed too, other people's kids do that when they see these things. Not adults so much, it's just kids. They'll say like, what do you think that thing eats? Or do both heads eat, or just one? Or like, how, you know, how do all these things work?
Rather than seeing it as some freakish mutation that is to be pitied, or whatever, the curiosity is, hey, wow, what can that do?
Yeah, and I think that that's a really interesting thing that kids have a tendency to do. And I don't know, adults get, like, they have such a huge potential to be freaked out by like nominal change. And, you know, people will seem fascinated, but also horrified. And I really don't think, for the most part, I don't think I've ever had a kid that really seemed horrified. And that goes into, kids will always freely interpret, and when adults won't. It's almost like you get a refusal to understand, or a refusal to put your own ideas in when you get older. And I guess when you're a kid, you just don't really have any idea what reality is. So it doesn't matter. The more that I've thought about these things, or the more that I've had to think about them in the context of how other people see them, you know, they seem to be more and more about, I guess, this obliviousness to imperfections, or like, how do you know something's an imperfection unless someone tells you it is? Like, if I had 3 arms, and they were all functioning, I would be happier because I need them. I mean, I could really use an extra arm. Had I had one, I wouldn't have broken my yellow dog. But, you know, like, I would also be a freak show, and that would be, you know, that would have its own, like, series of detriments. But, like, with these guys, yeah, I feel like, you know, they kind of exist in this oblivion to their modifications or to their imperfections. And I find a lot of times too with finding ceramics is they already look really, a lot of them already have some major, or what I would consider to be like major issues in their construction that cause them to look very bizarre. Like, a lot of them are already made to look like Siamese twins, even though, you know, they're marketed as like, this is 2 cats playing, and I'm like, it looks like 1 cat with 2 heads. But you know, it's all about like how something's marketed and how people want to see it. And yeah, I don't know, these for me are they don't really have problems unless you want to see them as problems. I guess it's more about object perception, which maybe is ultimately more boring than science. But I don't know, for me, these are so much more about just like the perception of what objects are. I don't know, I think that's the greatest thing about being able to work with found objects, is you know, so much just working with contexts and people's perception and you know, knowing that people have seen things like this before a lot. And then how much do they see when they just like are presented with an object in this context, or you know, what context does it have to be in for you to notice it? They have kind of a, or for me, they have a pretty hilarious amount of just like initial shock value, which I don't get to deal with a lot in some of the other work that I do. But I think they also have a degree of subtlety. Like I can leave them all sitting here in this room where my clients come in to drop off their actual ceramics in need of repair, and they can't see the modifications because they're not being made aware of them. I mean, obviously, if I'm submitting stuff to a show, you know, a juror's going to see immediately that these have been modified, but if they're just sitting in this room, in this context, they look, I guess to people's brains, they just look like things they've seen before. Like, I feel like I could hide these in people's china cabinets sometimes. And they would think, you know, you open it up one day and you're like, oh my God, that thing grew an extra leg. And that's, I don't know why, but I also don't find that to be like sinister in any sort of way. I suppose to some people it would be. You know, it's like somehow slowly the DNA is being altered of these things, or that it is in fact alterable. I think that's the other thing too that I think is so fantastic about being able to do these things is they are alterable. I don't know, he feels like the same pig to me. Which I guess is a good thing, because I liked him. That's why I picked him up in the first place.
So do you kind of imagine alternative environments for these animals to live in as well, where their mutations would be adaptations to that environment? Or
to a degree, I don't know, I kind of imagine them to be mutated in their own environment. Like, you know, he would go to the farm and he would like live on a farm like in Charlotte's Web or something, kind of like this idealized farm, and he would be someone's pet, and he would be able to, you know, I don't know what use these legs would have, other than I sort of imagine him kind of like rolling around in the mud when it's hot, and then like, I don't know, maybe something comes that he doesn't like and he doesn't have to turn over to run away. And so I think kind of in my own head, really what they go into is these idealized, or what I would consider to be this kind of idealized animal environment, or kind of human and animal environments. I think also there's a lot of like, I don't know, kind of history or mythology is like full of these strange animals, and not all of them are necessarily monsters. You know, people have been kind of, I guess, quote unquote, improving animals in their own minds for a long time.
this could also be kind of like more pig than pig. You know, like more human than human.
Yeah. I don't know, like where I grew up, people got really mad at you if you're too smart. Like the result of being too smart was anger. Like people were mad at you, and they wanted you to like take it down a notch. And if, like, for me, it's like if we put this pig in a room with a bunch of other pigs, I would want the other pigs to be like, wow, that pig can like do something we can't do. It's awesome. Instead of, you know, being like, oh my God, he's mutated, let's shun him, he'll be in the corner by himself. But I would like to think that, you know, I want to put these things in places where they're, or I mean, not even necessarily that they're just accepted for what they are. Is more like they're like noticed. They're more exciting. Yeah, but I would want them to be like appreciated for the skill set that they bring into the group.
The only problem here is in perception.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I think. I always seem to want to come back to that. The problem is the way you're thinking about it. But I think that about a lot of things, so I guess that would just be putting my life philosophy on these little guys.
You know, how important is it that the viewer perceives in a similar way that you do?
Very little, or not very important. I mean, it's sort of funny. I think I want the viewer to perceive something, and I think for a lot of people, what they perceive is going to come on just like these different levels of personality and different levels of like ability to appreciate something or understand something. And if they ask me, I'll tell them what I think, and that might change their mind. But overall, I would kind of say I want to stay out of it. I feel like that just has something really intense to do with the artistic mind and privacy. You know, it's like the critic's job to decide what art's about, and it's the artist's job just to make the stuff in the first place. I think, or I would hope, that the success of a piece is ultimately can make a viewer stop long enough to think something, anything, that would be kind of beyond the bounds of what their normal thinking is. By making things so like beautifully, accessibly easy that people go into them and they don't realize what happens until they've gone too far to turn back. It's kind of a trick.
It's almost like if you can get them to look, maybe you can get them to think.
Right, and I think kind of an ultimate degree of success for me is being able to crawl up inside someone's head enough that you keep reappearing, even if somebody doesn't know why. It's just like you want to be able to have some kind of really sticky, like a stickiness to what you do, which doesn't necessarily mean people will understand you at all or even remember who you are, but they'll remember this thing. Like, I don't know, art is all tied into philosophy, and philosophy is completely made of circular arguments that have no answers. And so no matter where you go, you have to be going in the right direction, because eventually you end up right back at the beginning of the circle. No matter what you say or do. Pretty much where I want to be here. I mean, as far as this piece goes, could be taken in so many contexts. I only play God so much. And I think I'm happy with him in the context of his pigness. Anyway, he's some pig.